when I was young, I just figured out like, okay, so if I don't know how to hit a curveball, how do I learn to hit a curveball? Coach or something said to me, well, why don't you just practice hitting curveball? It seems like a simple statement, but like, that's the key to life. If I can't hit a curveball and you throw me 1,000 curveballs, am I going to be better at hitting the curveball?
For sure.
But that's the big secret everyone's looking for. Like if you don't get discouraged by the fact that you have to swing 1,000 times, which by the way, maybe it's not 1,000, maybe it's 500, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 10, maybe it's one a day. But if you don't get discouraged by the process, you have to really want the thing that you're pursuing. You can't just kind of be like, that would be nice to have, to give up.
Yep.
You have to want it so bad, because if you don't, the process is so difficult to get there. I don't even blame you for giving up.
Yep.
But if you do, I've never met anyone that was obsessed with what they wanted that didn't get it. I have never met that person, ever.
Mr. Derik Fay, thank you for coming on.
James, Jamie.
A lot of people that are build something successful, do something successful, achieve anything great, are normally running from something. My question is for you at your start, what were you running from? And do you still feel like you're running from that?
Wow. You're not, there's no fluffing or anything. Jumping right into the hard questions, huh? Woo. Was I and am I?
And what were you at that time?
At that time, I was running from my entire existence. So I guess you have to go back to go forward, right? So as you know, I grew up in Rhode Island. Mom and dad divorced before I was born, or very, very close there too. And so they were both very young. I mean, I'm 46 now. My dad is 66. My mom is 65. So they're babies, raising a baby, and had no money. And so I was with my mom in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, in Section 8 in the projects. No food, all that type of stuff. And then my mom got remarried to a monster of a man. And he was physically, emotionally, sexually, like the most abusive human being you could ever imagine. And so it's an environment that you would want to run from. And so, although actually initially I found myself drawn to it and not wanting to run from it, because I wanted to protect. And so, although I knew it was wrong at a young age, I found myself putting me physically kind of in the line of fire, because I figured out at a young age if I took whatever the form of abuse was, that they would get it a little bit less. And a lot of people have asked me, how did that impact your life? And we can, certainly dig deep on that, because profoundly in every way, I think every measure of a man, it impacted me. But yeah, it all I ever wanted to be was rich, but bigger than that. Not like initially it wasn't rich. Like I wasn't dreaming about Ferraris and mansions. And my concept of rich was different from what everybody listening thinks of rich now. To me, then rich was not having to miss meals, not having to be scared, living in a place where you didn't hear people screaming all the time and people getting hurt every day and getting in fights every single day as a little boy. That to me was this vision of rich. And so that's where it started and what pushed me forward.
So then now, do you think that that's the same drive and fire that fuels you, or have you had to, like, what does that transition look like once you got the concept of rich that you're describing?
Yeah, well, you're talking about a transition from 9 to now 46. There's been iterations of that throughout the decades, and maybe even decade by decade, if I really think about it, which is probably more factually true. Teenage years, 20s, 30s, 40s, they've been actually pretty profoundly different in regards to that question by each decade. Yeah.
What was the most game-changing decade?
Well, we go through it real quick. I mean, initially the pursuit was just to get out of the craziness. And then my 20s was confusing because I had decided that all of the things that we all consider wealth, cars, houses, money, buying, showing off, that was the thing that was going to make that little boy feel safe.
Mm.
And of course it didn't.
Mm.
And then in the 30s, it was, okay, well, it wasn't, the Bentley that made me happy and the 10,000 square foot house. But now I'm really grooving. So I know what it is. It's the Rolls Royce in the 30,000 square foot home. That's going to do it. And of course, it doesn't. And what starts to happen is you're pursuing more, which is admirable to pursue more from an entrepreneurial standpoint. But you start to build up this frustration and resentment towards what you're doing because what you knew was going to cure all of this heartache and pain or desires or make you happy becomes pretty clear that it's not. You just keep moving the ball farther and farther away. And then you come to I came to my 40s where I think I had the realization, although I think I knew earlier, I accepted the fact that this pursuit of more wasn't going to fulfill or make me happy in the way that I needed to. I love entrepreneurship. I'm always in the pursuit of more, but now for different reasons. And so I think that's a pretty clear distinction of each kind of decade, how I've grown and matured. And I think I look forward to what the next one will be in my 50s and my 60s, because I find myself changing very consistently through the seasons. I'll call seasons decades. And I hope I think that's maybe the measure of a man, is to keep kind of looking back at who you were and deciding if everything that you were is exactly who you want to be. And for me, it's never been a profound 100% yes. There are pieces of me that I'm proud of from that past decade, but there are pieces of me that I need to work on and change.
How do you not get caught up in self-loathing when you realize that there was something that you pursued that was empty?
I don't think self-loathing is, how do I not get caught up in that? Because I believe I have the ability to radically change the things about myself that I don't like. Although I wouldn't say that it's easy, but it's not hard.
Mm.
And so it's not easy in the sense that you have to do the work, you have to recognize, but it's also not hard because you just got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like right? So I shouldn't say never. There was a time, I think, through my early teens through late 20s where I was doing things that, as I look back, I'm not sure I thought very highly of myself, clearly.
Mm.
And the time I didn't experience, like I didn't like myself, but I was living in some pretty risky behaviors and making poor decisions, all in the scope of, I've earned this and I'm going to do it. But in reality, I think I was doing these things to keep my demons at bay.
Was there a part of you just said like you felt like you deserved it? Now there's two sides to that coin.
Mm-hmm.
The broken part of you that feels like you deserve to be in that scenario, like a shithead doing shithead things, like things that you're not necessarily proud of now. And then also the side of you that was very successful early on and felt like you had this sense of, no, I deserve this. What was winning more at that stage?
Let me try to answer it like this. I think in my youth, I felt like things were owed to me. I felt like I had paid such a severe price in my childhood that just because I was still standing and I had made it through and I had sacrificed for people that I loved, that the world owed me something.
Mm.
And, some psychologists could probably put together a pretty good case study on how, in a bubble, someone that went through that stuff in a perfect world should be owed something. But the reality of life is that's just not how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
We all go through what we go through. We don't get anything for it other than surviving or not. And so I played the victim for a bit. I used to love to tell myself my story And I played that for a bit and had some self-destructive behavior. And in spite of myself, I had success, but not enough. And I didn't like who I was becoming. And so I made a change because I wasn't living up to who I thought I could be. And that's a statement not as a 46-year-old man, it's a statement as a 20 or 19-year-old person, which I think is rare to have that level of self-belief or expectation of yourself. But having gone through what I did, I had a glimpse of how strong I was at a young age. And I wasn't living up to that in my late 20s. I'm sorry, in my late teens, early 20s.
Why do you think people get addicted to being a victim?
Well, it's easy. I mean, why do you get addicted to be a victim? I think like I just told you, you've overcome, you've gone through so much. You feel like I said, like the world should recognize what you've gone through, in that it's just like I would say, if you worked for a company for 10 years and you worked 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they were horrendous to you, but you kept telling yourself, listen, it's going to be worth it someday. I'm putting in the work, I'm doing everything right, I'm persevering. Something's got to come on the other end of this. And then at the end of that, they just cut you loose and tell you goodbye. Like you're going to be left feeling like, what the?
Yeah.
What, like, and you're going to tell that story to yourself as a reason why you should never do it again, why you should never try again. You're going to tell everyone that will listen because you want that validation. And like I said, I went through it, but it's as worthless as having never done anything. Like there's no reciprocal validation that's ever going to change it, and there's no reciprocal value that you're ever going to get from doing it. And the sooner you realize it, the better. Unfortunately, a lot of people go through their whole life hoping, I guess, that it's going to change. And sometimes people have that as such a strong identity that they feel like letting go of the worst things that ever happened to them is somehow going to leave them lost in like this abyss of I don't know who they are, versus now I get to finally start figuring out who I was meant to be.
So that point is so interesting. It's this untethered identity
Right.
that I think so many people want,
Yep.
but they don't know what they actually want from that. Because there's been times in my life where my story was the driver. It was like the oil
Sure.
that you put in the car to make it drive.
Yeah.
And letting go of that, before I had let go of that, you would almost kind of worry that you were going to lose your edge. You're going to lose that drive that like put you in the position that you're in now.
Sure.
How did you deal with that? How did you, once you let that go, and obviously you talked about picking up like the dream reality of like the cars and the whatever, do you think it has to be like a swap? Like you're like, okay, I'm no longer a victim, I'm now this person. And how do you kind of find the good oil to put into the car instead of the toxic kind of victim mentality?
Well, if you've gone through something traumatic, you're never not, you've been victimized, and that stays with you for your entire life. So you're always going to be someone that was victimized, but you don't have to always be a victim. And so it never goes away. It's never completely gone. I'll never not be that poor kid from Rhode Island. I'll never forget the things that happened. You know, I'm 35, 37 years removed from it. And there are moments in any given day, week, month, or year where I remember certain things, and I act the way that I act with my daughters because of the things that happened to me. I act the way that I act with my partners because of the things that happened to me. I act the way to the valet guy who parks my car because of the way that things were done to me. So it's also a bit of a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered the question, but I wholeheartedly believe, we've talked about this before, and it like hit me 2 or 3 years ago. I think it's somewhat profound. Like someone asked me, you know, what was the biggest influence in your life? And it makes me sick almost to say it, but it's so true. It's like the person that hurt me the most probably contributed the most to the person that I am today, and I'm incredibly proud of that.
There's an idea that I'm kind of trying to work through, and I kind of want your help with it. There's this mantra, and I get it, of like how like you learn more from failing than you do from winning.
Most times.
I'm kind of challenging that idea, and I heard a podcast with the founder of Whoop,
Mhm.
and he talked about, he was the first person that I heard challenge this idea, and he was like, you know, if I would have failed at Whoop when we were kind of on our last leg, what would I have learned from that experience?
Mhm.
Well, I would have learned to go to market quicker, to make a more mass recepted product
Mhm.
faster. Don't pursue all the athlete deals that we did, and basically build the complete company differently. That now that it is successful,
Yep.
are the main things that created the brand that Whoop has built to this day. And he was going through this experience, like this walkthrough of the unicorns, the ATCs, the things that you build that are massively successful almost have a mystical aura to them that is harder to learn from, that you can't learn in failure. Most failures are, you either ran out of cash, you are fighting with your business partner, you are like, there's maybe a handful of different reasons why things go wrong. I'd be interested to get your take on that.
Well, I think there's levels of failure. And so like in that case, yes, if his entire company crumbled and he went bankrupt, would there really have been a compelling lesson in that? Maybe, maybe not. But so I don't think, or at least when I say I've learned more from my failures, I don't mean I had never had a all-encompassing failure. I didn't go completely bankrupt. I didn't lose everything. I think that's where people's minds go. So maybe a better way to say it is you learn more from your missteps than you do anything, right? And that's definitely true. I've learned a lot from failures. I learn a lot from my success too, right? It's one of those sayings that is, tactically true, but maybe not literally true. And so I don't think you can apply it so like a blanket statement. So if I, for example, what did I like? Let's take a moment with ATC back in the day. I'm about to acquire. I think it was our third location. Had the funding ready. Everything was done. I have to go sign papers, so I sign a new lease. I sign the purchase agreement. I go to Regions Bank after I've done that on Friday over here in Fort Myers. I walk in, I sit down at the table with everyone, and they say, Mr. Fay, before we prepared the documents, we went through one more underwriting because it's the end of the month, and we've decided to pivot away from fitness, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to fund the loan. And I said, well, I just signed the purchase agreement and I signed the lease. And they said, well, we're sorry. And I can still, every time I drive by Regions on 41, I remember sitting in that parking lot, holding the steering wheel, looking at the steering wheel, thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I have to pay. It was a Friday. I had to pay I think it was $1.5 million on Monday. The funding was gone and I had $1.3 million in my bank account. Now, there's a lesson in that.
Yeah.
It's not complete failure. It could have been. The lesson was, of course, don't be a dumbass and sign anything before you have the money in your account. So there's certainly a lesson there, right? So I think every situation is a little bit different. By the way, I did pull the trigger, drain my bank account down to zero, leveraged some equipment in the other facilities and got it done. And that was one of the times where I was paycheck to paycheck. I had hundreds of employees, multiple locations, and not a single person in the entire enterprise knew. And I was each day, a day away from failing until things took off again.
So I want to talk about that this idea that success is linear is
anything linear completely?
No,
Right.
But the idea from a young builder perspective, there's something I heard from Naval that I loved. He was like, if you want to be successful, don't look at the scoreboard and don't clock the time. Because every time you do, you end up further behind than you want to be and not enough time that you wanted to get there. So this idea of you launching your third location, and the people that don't know the backstory, the first location, super successful, ran it for 7 years. Really, if
Perfecting the model.
if you didn't have the aspirations you had at that time,
Yep.
you could have had a great living,
We're making $3 million a year profit.
staying exactly where you were.
Mhm.
How mentally did you deal with the despair at points throughout the process where you were like, I'm back at zero again?
I didn't have a choice.
Hmm.
I had too many people that were counting on me to give up. I mean, I think that's just a real honest answer, because I don't want to say that I may have given up if it was just me, but we don't really know. But there's really not an option when you've got hundreds of people counting on you, multiple hundreds or thousands of people in family members. You've got all of these things. You've got your family. You've got everybody counting on you. And it just wasn't an option.
How much did your identity play into that?
Ask it a different way.
How did your identity play into the decision to not quit?
I'm not going to say that I'm never a selfish man, because I think sometimes business can be selfish. But my identity doesn't have anything to do with me when I'm running and building companies. I don't really matter. My decisions matter. My strategy matters. My tactics matter. How I feel about myself, whether I think this makes me look good or makes me look bad, or I feel happy or I feel sad, doesn't really matter. Like, it matters to me, and other people will pretend that it matters. But I learned at a really young age that my favorite expression, people, how are you? I'm good, I'm bad, I'm the same. It doesn't matter. I decided to become an entrepreneur. I decided to talk human beings into leveraging their lives against my idea. I have a job in this world, and that is to do good for them. And so I don't care if I had a shit day. I don't care if I'm unhappy in my marriage. I don't care if this stuff's going bad, or I don't get a distribution this month. Who cares? You told 200 people they could rely on you, and then they told their wives that they could rely on you, and then their children are counting on you doing your job, and you want to come and say that you don't feel well today, or you're having an identity problem? Get out of here. Those are the ones that fail.
Yeah.
And so it's all true. I'm not a robot. I feel those things. I just told myself, basically inside, grow up. Like, you don't matter in this moment. You can matter when the cash is flowing.
Yeah.
That's to me, it's been very unemotional. You have to be.
How do you do that? How do you, maybe people can relate to it, maybe they can't. The hardest thing for me is going through adversity and keeping a sharp, because I am relied on in the only respects that you just said, tactics, strategy, all these types of things. When I say move, that's where things move. And so when I'm trying to filter decision-making process based around emotional thought processes or feelings, how can I separate the two?
Give me an example.
It
doesn't have to be a real.
Yeah. So let's just say, I have I had a bad day. Like, I'll give you a real example. So you get hit with a bill that you weren't expecting.
Okay.
You're used to making X amount each month that goes on. And it's like, you've reinvested everything back into the company because that's how it's going to grow, blah, 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 blah. And then you get hit with a bill that you weren't expecting.
Okay. Happens
and
all
you
the
go,
time.
Okay. How in that moment can you keep the mindset on the future and everything that you're feeling when things are going well, instead of everything's got to change, we got to cut this, we got to stop doing this, we got to, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it comes with emotional maturity.
Yeah.
So that's not an answer, but it is a little bit like, I would just tell you to grow up. You know it. That's what if you called me with that, which you have in the past, I would tell you to grow up. Like, grow up or get out.
Yeah.
And so I'm not, you know me, so you can speak to the fact that outside of business, I'll even say I'm an emotional man. I care deeply for and about people, but you've also seen me in moments when it comes to business. It's not that I don't care. It's that this culture of coaching and fluffiness, it doesn't do anybody any good. So you need to make a decision. If you want to be in the game, there are certain things that come along with that game. And so if you want to be the guy and you aspire to be the person that's on the top of the mountain, whatever that mountain is for you, there are some really basic rules to this game. Just like you're playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
Like, there were rules, and one of them is you don't come first. And I think maybe that's the biggest miss when people are entering entrepreneurship. They think that they're the focus of this pursuit, when you're not. You're taking all the risk. You're making most or all of the decisions, but you matter last. You matter the least. Like, it's
you eat last.
It's kind of confusing. Right, exactly. That's why when people, how much money does your company make? $60 million. We all know when that's the top line, right? Yeah. So what does your company profit, right? And so, I have young entrepreneurs that are grossing $60 million a year, and, they're making $100,000 a year. They're paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And so there are two types of people in that situation. There's the one that says, I'm failing and I should stop this or get out. And then there's the other one that says, I might not be getting exactly what I want right now, but I've got momentum. I have this, and I have this. And so you got to be a little crazy.
You do.
You got to be a little crazy for this game, which is probably why I've been really good at it.
Yeah.
But that's not absent moments where I have, like you said, sat there by myself and questioned whether I really want to continue to do this. And yes, actually, it was a really great question, because I'm me realizing it in the moment. Potentially, the only reason I kept going in certain situations was everybody else.
It's interesting that you said that, because that's what I go back to.
Yep.
Because it's, everybody that works here, for the most part, I went to college with. Mm-hmm. And we're all really close.
Sure.
And any time that things have gotten really hard, it's always gone back to the fact that,
yeah.
It's almost that impossibility of, I can't let them down. I'm fine to wallow in myself. Yep. Like, I've failed plenty personally, but the last thing that I ever want to do is fail or quit
them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wait until you have to fire one of them.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of if.
Yeah.
Right? It's a whole nother horrific part of.
How have you dealt with that type of thing?
Same way. I've unfortunately hired and fired family members, best friends, hired and fired my brother multiple times, and lost some of my best friends. And again, it's the same answer, just to keep reiterating. You have to become what the outside people would consider it cold, but you have to protect the assets inside of the business, which are the people capital, the business, all these types of things. And it becomes very difficult, especially when people are close to you, because they believe that there is a preference. And the most dangerous thing is when you start demonstrating some preference. No, this is not a universal rule, because some people can be very loyal and have a huge history with you, but that is not the rule. It's typically the opposite. It ends up getting taken advantage of and having to have that hard conversation. And if you don't have that hard conversation, that is the number one way to destroy good employees, is to allow bad behavior in some other employees. You're dead in the water.
Yeah. Speak to what you think from, let's focus on around the clock, because that was you've had success in the past, but from a building perspective, that was a massive success. And you want to talk about building great products, and this is not to, jerk you off in this position, but the idea of building what around the clock fitness was. I was at the Fort Myers location off of Alico.
Mhm.
The best, to this day, the best gym that I went to. The vibe was awesome. Just simple things like smoothie bar, snack bar,
Mhm.
happy employees, people that cared about you. And the story that I love, you built an outdoor gym section
Mm.
in this place where the noise ordinance wasn't allowing you to do so. And the only time you shut it down was when you were trying to sell the company because you couldn't.
That may or may not be true. Sounds like a rumor to me.
Talk about this, the common or what you learned from that success.
Everybody wants to scale, but scaling is not getting bigger, it's getting better.
Mm.
And so I had the first gym for 7 years where year one, we were making $3 million profit.
Damn.
And so everyone in the world wanted me to grow. Everybody wanted me to scale, but I was a ruthless and relentless perfectionist. I fell in love with the concept of what my brand should be and could be. And so I have always been a gym lover, and I always felt like there were these missing parts, and the gym felt cold, and there wasn't like a way for a bodybuilder and his grandfather participate in the same facility. And I thought that the flow of traffic had issues, and I would go to the gym and then have to drive somewhere else to get this and then somewhere else to get this. And so I had this grand vision of what it should be. And I worked despite what everyone says, I worked in the business and on the business every single day for the better part of 6 years. I was there 12 to 18 hours a day, every single day, as the founder and CEO, demonstrating what I saw and felt. And so my employees didn't have to guess what the expectation was. They didn't have to guess what the brand was because they saw it and they lived it. So they didn't need to read an SOP because they saw the owner of the company walk in every day and pick up garbage as he walked in. They saw me get out of my desk and hand an employee a $20 gift card because I saw him pick up a piece of garbage. They saw me change a frame on the wall because it was replaced by a manager, but it didn't match every other frame in the facility. They watched me go to a disgruntled member who had a bad personal training experience, and I went and got my head of PT and told them, I'm sorry you had a horrible experience. It is unacceptable. You're going to get free training from my head of PT until you tell us that you're now satisfied. And so when you start doing things like that, it's almost impossible for everyone else not to follow suit. And then what happens is then the members started walking in and picking up garbage. And so you create this culture. That's a culture. Culture is not a mantra on the wall. It's not something that you give to a new employee. It's about what you're doing from the top down. And until I saw that everyone was acting in accordance with what I saw as a vision for my consumers, only then did we start to grow. And then we were ready to grow, and we grew 6x in 4 years. And so I learned that being obsessed and radically obsessed with your vision is really the only way to get things to a level that everyone is talking about.
It's so funny
You
because
can't just outsource that.
it's sometimes I feel crazy because I'll like sit upstairs in the office and feel the need to just go, no, let's do it like this. And I've had people say like, you're babysitting. Like,
Okay.
Why are you babysitting? Why are you so? And I realized there is something that you said earlier that I want to call back to. It's the accountability piece. It's the biggest difference between true entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs. You don't get, and you shouldn't get, the admiration and the like pat on the back when things go well. Because at the end of the day, like you said, you're more insignificant than you realize. But what you definitely get, no matter what, and the conversations that I have in here all the time, is that there's never a day, Danny, who's doing the thing right now, can attest this. There's never been a day where a client has come pissed off and I've thrown one of the team members under the bus to put myself in a better position.
That's the death of a company.
It 100%. And this is something I've learned from you,
Yep.
because it's the situation of the accountability falls on you when everything goes bad. So if this company collapses tomorrow, people are going to remember the fact that you were the one that was saying, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. So it's those little moments of focusing on the minor details. My question, how do you turn that off when you get into real life? Because the hardest part that I've found is that perfectionist that is great in a business is horrific in a relationship. And it's horrific when you're talking about your health and these things, because so many people, you just take the health example, so many people are so focused on no seed oils, no this, no that, no that, and then they end up eating nothing. And then they end up, fasting for 12 days in a row and calling it healthy and then having to go on a health binge. So there's a perfectionist trap outside of the world of business. How have you kind of dealt with that fluctuation, if at all?
I mean, I think I'm a perfectionist in probably every way. I live my life very systematic. Good, bad, or indifferent. I figured out at a really young age, how did I get here? How did I become successful? If I really dig down at it, like, how did I go from that victim, not really knowing what the hell I'm doing as a kid? I started tracking everything I did in a day. Now, I mean, everything. Like, wake up, 6 a.m. Not anymore. wake up, 6 a.m. Had this, did this. And I also tracked what I was buying. Gas, $45. This, I tracked it. And then at the end of the day, I would reconcile the day. How much money did I spend? This is true. Was I spending on entertainment? Was it an essential spend? Was it a waste spend? I had these buckets, and then I looked at it. And then I tracked, how did I feel today? I felt strong, I had a great lift, did all these things. And then the next day, I would do it again. And then the next day, I was like, man, I felt weak at the gym. I felt this. And so I would look at it, and I wasn't like, oh, what a mystical situation. Why did I feel bad? Oh, let's look back. Well, you had 12 Tito's and soda, and you skipped 4 meals. I wonder why you felt like shit. So maybe that's an extreme example, but I started to remove things in my day that didn't optimize the result that I wanted in the next. And I did the same thing with spending. And for me, for the spending, it wasn't necessarily about saving money, because I'm more of an earner than a saver. I started to actually have a relationship with the money and where it was going, which was crazy important for me. Most people, including myself at that time, I didn't realize where it was going. It was just not there.
Bleeding.
What a mystery. I wonder who took the $85 out last night. Oh, again, it was the Tito soda.
Yeah.
So I began optimizing my days. And what that ended up leading into was a almost militaristic approach to my day. And so even still today, I pretty much eat the exact same thing every day. If you want to call me and you know when I'm on the way to the gym, you know when I'm done with the gym. Like, so it's taking control. You don't have to do that thing. It's an example of, find your own way, taking control of what you're doing inside of your day. So many people, I think, just get up and just kind of go where the wind blows. And then at the end of the day, I feel like I worked hard today. But what did you do? And so if you did work hard, wouldn't it be great to go back and go, God damn, look at that. I checked off 9 things today. Or even maybe more compelling, I worked really hard today. And you go back and you're like, I didn't do shit today. Oh man, okay. Like, self-awareness seems so obvious, but I think it's like the most elusive trait in mankind is actually being self-aware, because being self-aware sometimes means you have to go, man, I'm acting like an asshole. And then you get to decide if you want to be an asshole. And if you do, well, I guess own that and deal with the repercussions. Or decide not to be, and then you can change the trajectory of your life.
I had to learn this getting married. There is busyness and there's productivity.
Oh, yeah.
Huge difference. And I found myself before I got married constantly with the excuses, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't
Popular phrase.
excuse. I can't show up at home because I didn't get enough work done at work and and it's this
Which none of it's true.
it's this fallacy for sure. But then you go to those really productive days where you're like, damn, I rushed it today.
Right.
My question on that, how do you motivate yourself on the productive days? You checked a lot of boxes. Like for me, some of the most productive days that I can have is when I'm closing a new deal. It's that immediate gratification of like, yep. Killed something, brought it home.
Right. Ego.
Here you go.
Ego boost.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
How did you motivate yourself, or not even motivate, just keep the discipline on the days where you showed up, you checked boxes, and there was no instant gratification to be had?
For me, it was the knowledge. How do I answer that? I guess I call it reverse engineering. So what I learned early, and really I think it was through sports, was that anything can be achieved so long as you have two markers. Marker one is where you are today, and marker two is where you want to be. There's nothing, no matter how vast the distance between where you are and where you want to be, there is absolutely zero chance that you can't get there if you're aware of those 2 points. Now, it's impossible if you try to go from where you are to where you want to be immediately. But if you, what I call reverse engineer the 2 points, it's impossible to not get there. So when I decide I want to go to a certain place, success-wise, life-wise, whatever, I'm looking at those 2 points, and you know this about me. I've plotted what has to happen to get to that point. And so I don't look at any given day as a failure or as some days are a complete waste, and sometimes those days are the greatest days of all.
Yeah.
Right? But progress is slow day to day, and it's incredibly fast over months, years, and decades. And so I think I figured that out early. I'm trying to think I talked about it recently, but like in sports, when I was young, I just figured out like, okay, so if I don't know how to hit a curveball, how do I learn to hit a curveball? And I remember there was a coach or something said to me, well, why don't you just practice hitting curveballs? And it seems like it seems like a simple statement, but like, that's the key to life.
Yeah.
Like, so if I can't hit a curveball and you throw me 1,000 curveballs, am I going to be better at hitting the curveball?
For sure.
But that's the big secret everyone's looking for. Like if you don't get discouraged by the fact that you have to swing 1,000 times, which by the way, maybe it's not 1,000, maybe it's 500, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 10, maybe it's one a day. But if you don't get discouraged by the process, and here's the thing, you have to really want the thing that you're pursuing. You can't just kind of be like, that would be nice to have, to give up.
Yep.
You have to want it in a way like I wanted success as a child. You have to want it so bad, because if you don't, the process is so difficult to get there. I don't even blame you for giving up.
Yep.
But if you do, I've never met anyone that was obsessed with what they wanted that didn't get it. I have never met that person, ever.
So what I'm curious, because me and you have had this conversation off camera sometimes, and now I'm starting, even in this conversation, I'm starting to connect a lot of pieces. Was ATC the most, I call this on purpose, this idea of being on purpose. I heard it at church recently. When you're off purpose and something bad happens, it's devastating. When you're on purpose and something bad happens, it's almost like, it's kind of just
a bump on the highway.
Yeah, it's a bump on the highway. That's a great way of putting it. For you, although you were pursuing the idea of wealth in this very not superficial way, but like superficial in terms of the cars, the houses,
sometimes
that type of things. Was that true when you were doing ATC? Like how could I personally, I don't see how you could have been, because it was something if I know anything about you, your love for the gym and bodybuilding and all those things, like it just seems like that's what you loved.
I got beautifully lost in the process.
That's sick.
Now, the outside part was, of course, paying bills and success, and I was always driving towards, but you're right. During that, I was in a bubble. I was in a beautiful, just creative, productive bubble where the only thing I cared about was that everything that I could control, I would control, and the things that I couldn't, I was excited to find a new path, a new process, a new person, like one of those three things that could cure and fix and make this thing that I saw so clear in my mind come to life. And, you know, as you're bringing back memories, so I would lease the building, and you'd have this big empty 50,000 square foot space. You ask anyone that's worked with me, and one of the first nights, and sometimes it was one night, sometimes it was 2 or 3, I would go there like 10 o'clock at night. I would sit in the middle of this empty space in a chair with a pad and paper, and I would just sit there. Just sit there, sometimes for an hour, sometimes 2, 3, 4 hours. And I would close my eyes and I would picture this thing that existed only in my mind. And sometimes I would draw, like, you know, so I'm a member, and I'm walking in the front door, and this is how I want to be greeted. And then when I'm greeted, this is what I see. And then this is what I'm handed. And now I'm going to walk past the juice bar, and I'm going to go to the locker room. And actually, emotional experience. And then seeing that come to life, like if you're that ingrained in what you're building for the experience, for your consumer, for your people, I don't see how you could ever lose.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a detachment with some of the young entrepreneurs that are just so quick to build the thing that gives me money. Yes, I was building it for money, for sure. But there was more to it. I was proud of what I was creating.
See, that's so cool. Because
and to this day, probably the most proud I've ever been of anything I've built.
I wrote an essay called the Perils of Winning Too Early. And I chronicled this point in my life where I pursued a horse feed business for about a year. And I talked about the reason I signed up for that business and I got in a business with this guy was because he showed me his projections.
Okay.
Now being at this stage of my business, I know what projections mean. They're garbage.
Horse shit?
Yeah. Literally horse shit. And it had like $1 million in the second year. And so I was hooked immediately again, being 19 or 20 or whatever I was at that point. Of course I was.
Yeah.
But I went down that road for 9 months, and obviously the company blew up. No wonder. But I had 6 months of time before I started anything new. I was working internship, making like $500, $1,000 a month, whatever covered the bills, you know what I mean? And I just sat there and I asked myself, what do I want to do for 6 months? And I'm so grateful for that period of time because I actually got to just go, money's not involved, and that's what ended up creating where we are now. And so my question, once you got to the mountaintop, and I love this going into this part, once you got to the mountaintop of ATC, you sold it. That was a beautiful story, but it's everywhere on social media. So if you want to know about that, watch any other podcast. We're not going to dive into that. But you got to that mountaintop. What was that feeling like?
Selling it? Bittersweet. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to have a large publicly traded company validate that you've built something at the national level. It's worth way too much money.
Yeah.
Not way too much, but you know what I mean? A lot of zeros. But then you have to face the fact that this thing that you saw that no one else saw, this thing that you bled for, this thing that you didn't sleep for, this thing that you gave up crushed a marriage for, this thing that you missed certain things for your kids, this thing that took maybe years off of your life, this thing that you literally breathed life into, is not yours anymore. And you drive by it every day. And so at first, it's super exciting. You get the check, and then, everyone thinks they can do it better than you. And then you watch them make changes, things that you spent 10 years ingraining into the culture of your company. And someone comes in just because they wrote the check, they wave it away as if it doesn't matter. And you've got all of your people that you trained and taught and they bled for you, looking to you like, how could you do this? How could you sell out? So it's a mixed bag of emotions. And at first, as I used to drive by, some of the facilities, and it's true with other companies that I bought and sold, it's emotional. It's a weird feeling. Like ATC, I went there every single day for 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
Still today, when I drive by the locations, the last one is officially no longer that. It's a crunch now. When I drive by, it's icky. It feels wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Again, you build companies. I build companies to sell them. That was my first one. It's always going to have a special place in my heart. So I guess the answer is it's bittersweet. Yeah, it's a mixed bag of good and bad.
Was that those months after obviously COVID kind of got thrown into it? Would you consider that one of the lowest points for you?
Yeah, but yes. A lot of factors, I think.
Yeah, of course. This isn't just
yeah.
selling the business. But
yeah, I sold the business. COVID hit. I was in the middle of a contentious divorce. And so, I had reached this thing, whatever that is, an amount of money in my bank that I dared to dream was possible. And then COVID hits. I'm alone. Wife at the time, we're getting divorced. They move out, custody. So there are a week at a time where I'm in this massive house alone, miserable, in questioning everything. And so there are certain special moments in life that destroy you or define you. And that's one that could have done either.
Yeah.
And I considered the destroy part, not like in my life.
Yeah.
Just go into that did this and this person did this and I shouldn't have done that. And, instead I just said to myself, this is a reflection of every decision you've made. Do you want to continue? See the difference in that?
So how in that moment did
One
you not
sentence.
fall into self-loathing?
Like goosebumps. Yeah, but it's not easy, but it's true. And you know me long enough now. It hurts every time I say it. But if you can say it to yourself and really mean it, it's followed immediately by a level of clarity that some people may never experience. And so I said it, and I realized that it was true. I did everything I wanted to do. No one swayed me. No one influenced me. No one pushed me. I made every single decision that led me to where I was. And so who else's fault was it that I wasn't happy? Right? But see, I have the ability to talk to myself like it's somebody else. So I don't always listen to myself. It's a bit of a flaw, but I have the ability to do it. And so I had this conversation with myself, and it changed everything, man. And so I decided, although I didn't know what that looked like yet, that I wasn't completely happy with where all my decisions had led me. And so then the next very quick question is, so what do I need to change?
Yeah.
And so I decided I needed to make some real fundamental changes. But without getting too deep into what they were, unless you want to, that was a real defining moment in my
Stay high level, but I think it would be valuable to understand what the...
I looked at the fact that why was I alone? And the first part that struck me was that I had built whatever it was at that point, 20 plus companies, and I owned 100% of every one of them. There were potentially situations where other people could have had equity, and I didn't, and probably because I was being an egomaniac. I wanted everything to be mine. And then I thought, well, maybe that is a part of the reason that I'm standing here by myself. Maybe I wasn't as gracious as I thought I had been. That's like coming out of my mouth like nails.
Yeah.
But it was factually true.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just went through the list of things that I knew but didn't want to face.
Yeah.
And then by facing them, it was super simple. Like, don't be that asshole.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that. Like, don't be that. Be something else. Or don't complain when you're in the same goddamn place in 10 years, but worse. And I always look at that. Like, if I don't do this, where am I going to be in 5 or 10 years? Well, it's not going to be better. And so if I'm hurting or I'm not happy now, what's that going to look like then? And so for at least my personality, that's enough to say, I'm making a change. And I did. And because of it, I don't know that I've ever been happier than I am at 46. And I expect fully to have another one of those defining moments, probably in a different way. And I say that because I've literally, not exactly 10 years. Every 7 to 10 years, something happens, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes profound, sometimes heartbreaking, but it causes me pause. And it's usually big. And I take a self-assessment, like where am I right now? Where am I with my family? Where am I personally? Where am I physically? Where am I financially? And am I happy with it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a sign of growth. And I almost look forward to those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Although sometimes they're not that great in the moment. I've never not had it change my life in a way that I'm incredibly grateful for.
It's so interesting hearing this from your perspective, because I had a moment, and I've talked about it a lot, but like a moment with Jordan, that exact thing.
Yep.
She sat down with me, and the beautiful thing about having a wife and significant other, and I know you know this, and probably the hardest thing is you have a mirror that is the closest to you than anybody else in the world.
It's true.
And so I had a moment where you can lie to yourself really well.
Gloriously.
Their job, your wife or your significant other, is to not. Like,
yeah, sometimes you wish they would a little
bit. A little bit. Maybe to lighten the blow. But she had a conversation with me, and I asked for it, but like just laid down all these points. All of these points. Mm-hmm. And man, the trap of self-loathing almost got me. Almost got me. And it's, this was almost a month and a half, 2 months ago. And I remember that point of like, your ego so badly wants to fight and be like, I deserve this. Mm-hmm. This is who this is who I am.
How about the biggest lie? I do this for you.
I do this for you.
We do it for us.
We
do it for us.
Look at all I've been through.
Yeah.
All this list of things. And I looked at myself in the same way that you're talking about and was like, damn, she's right. And then what?
That's very
next?
mature for your age.
But
if you're telling me the truth,
I'm going to get into the kind of next piece, because one of the big things was I had an unhealthy relationship with smoking.
I remember you said that. Yeah.
And I've battled this a lot. And I still, even though I'm sober now, I still think I'm battling with it for multiple different reasons. But that was a moment of like, oh, well, I work so hard all day.
Justification.
To deserve this at night.
Yeah.
But what happens? You show up, your wife comes home and you got nothing to give her.
Yeah.
Because you're brain dead.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I want to talk more about like the way that I've seen you shape shift around vices. You are one of the most hardcore partiers I've ever met in my life.
I would agree.
In my like Metallica level, like fair. Rock and roll style. It's crazy.
That might be true.
But at the same time, I've never seen somebody's ability to just done.
Yep.
Done for a minute too. Yep. This is the biggest difference. Nothing bad is happening. The sky's not falling. It's just like a, eh.
Yeah. Well, it's not an we all know, let's speak for me. I don't want to speak in generalities. I'm a work hard, play hard kind of guy.
Yeah. Respect you for it.
I don't
Wish
know.
I
I
could
don't know
learn
if I
that.
deserve respect for the play hard part. But I also believe that having a good level of fun is really good for you, and I actually believe having too much fun sometimes is really good for the soul too.
Yeah, I agree.
And everybody, you can argue with me or not. I don't really care. It works for me. But sometimes we all know when we're going too far. We all do.
Yeah.
We know we're going too far.
Yeah.
I'm in this unique situation where most people don't have whatever it takes to tell me that I've gone too far. And I also don't really care. And so that's not a good quality. It's not like it's a bad quality. But I always recognize when it's time, when I'm really pushing the envelope. And so I like to be able to show myself who's in charge. And so you'll see me drink pretty aggressively for, let's just call it, a period of time. And then I'll wake up one morning and go, I'm kind of going a little hard lately. I need to show myself that I can not drink for 3 months. And then I'm just done. And so I think it all ties, for my personality, I like to know, I believe I can control everything inside and around my life. Is it factually true? I don't know. But my voice in my head is saying, yes, it's true, Derik. It's true. But to the extent that I can make conscious decisions to benefit or harm my life, that's factually true for all of us. I just believe it to a degree I don't know that other people really do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answered the question, but
No, it did. Do you think you have an addictive personality?
100%. I couldn't answer that fast enough. I have an extremely addictive personality.
So how do you, in your moments of like reprieve?
Yeah.
Because I think there's something, and we've talked about it, like social media is a great example of something that you can be addicted to.
Addicted to anything.
You can't.
Yeah.
When you're in these periods of like sobriety and, how have you figured out how to replace the activity, or do you not think about it like that?
I don't think about it like that. I don't attach feelings to actions. So if I decide that drinking is not serving me, or I'm not having as much fun as I was, I should use it as an example.
Yeah.
I'm just done.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know who says this. It's not my line, but I don't negotiate with myself.
Yeah.
I make a decision. I'm in charge of me. I've told myself this is what's happening, and that's it. And sometimes it's uncomfortable for a period of time. But like I say to you all the time, I like to, if I go out and have too much fun, way too much fun, my ass gets up earlier than usual and goes to the gym because I'm punishing myself for that. Like, I'm very good at balance. And so I don't ever get lost in like perpetual bad habits that then roll into other bad habits. And then all of a sudden you're in this spiral. Like that's why I admit it. Yes, sometimes I drink too much. Yes, sometimes I make bad decisions, because when you start getting too far into the justifying and all this type of stuff, you lose yourself.
For real.
For real.
For real.
And I don't know that that's what addiction is, but I have a very addictive personality. And it's controlled in business. That's why I can be successful. Like I get addicted to an outcome. And this isn't always good for other people around me, but when I have my eye on an outcome, there's zero chance that, first of all, everything in my sphere goes dark.
The world.
It's just a linear focus on what I want until I get it.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying that's necessarily positive, because sometimes it isn't. It certainly wasn't when I was probably younger, because I hadn't refined my skills. So sometimes it took me far longer to get to that. And the longer it takes, I think the more people around you may pay a price for that.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm really good at that. I know how to get to what I want, but I can still be somewhat closed off. I still sometimes struggle with being present when I'm really tied on to something. And that's the imbalance, I think, in achieving big goals.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's this world where, and I've fallen into it, and I'm reading a book right now, The Essentials. There's trade-offs.
Of course
There are real, it's easy to say,
Mhm.
and then it's hard to actually implement. There's always somebody that wants to be the best at this and the best at that and the best at this. And what they end up being is great at none of them and half-ass at everything and like never really understanding what it would have meant to be all in. I think people have more of a fear and more of a belief that all in is bad. And I think it's taught to us, with extracurriculars at school, with, superlatives and like the best this and that and, doing 5 sports and blah, 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 all the way through college. But there's something so soul not fulfilling, but like so human about being all in.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think, well, let's call this like the honesty hour. There's something incredibly selfish about what we do as entrepreneurs.
For sure.
It's not for our family. It's not for our kids. We're not missing sporting events because we are so busy. Like it's a lie we tell ourselves. It's a lie that we tell our family members. Like it is 100% egotistical, driven endeavor,
self-fulfilling,
and there is no balance, and we know what we're giving up, and we don't care because we don't get the validation from anything else in our life like we do when we close a deal, when we succeed, when we sell that thing, when we get that customer. And it sounds gross and icky, and maybe it is, but let's just be honest about what's going on, because if you're not honest about it, like I'm super aware of my shortcomings. I don't always address them, but the fact that I'm aware of them, for me, like we talked about, it does allow me in certain moments to put them aside. But if you're just unable to actually even admit what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it, how are you ever going to be fully in control of your outcomes in life?
It's like this idea that the biggest struggle for me has been like having the conversations around it. I was the guy that was like, baby, I'm doing this for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm showing up every day for you.
Yep.
And it's like,
they would rather have us than what we're pursuing.
That's the reality. And there had to come a point where I was like, hey, we actually watched Free Solo. And Free Solo is a great movie with Alex Honnold. It's such a good movie. And this guy is pursuing this rock climbing. Like he's climbing. I
have seen bits and pieces.
It's so good. And he has a conversation with his then girlfriend, future wife, where she asks him, would there ever be something that comes into your life to where you wouldn't pursue what you're doing now? Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, maybe if there's ever an opportunity where I need to optimize my lifespan, that I would stop pursuing this. And she looks at him and goes, what if me asking you, would that? And he looked at her stone face and was like, no. And there's a moment to that. And me and Jordan are watching this together. And she looks at me and she goes, I get it. Because if he stopped at that point because she said to,
it's over.
He's never going to forgive himself.
And blame her forever.
And forever. And so there's a level of understanding what you're deciding to do and being comfortable with that, but also having a partner that is equally as comfortable with that fact.
Right.
That doesn't mean that when you're not doing the thing that you're a shithead. That's the biggest fallacy. It's like I'm all in, and then when I'm not there, I'm a shithead. This is something that I know you're doing a lot with your current partner, and Chandra's amazing and she's super understanding in terms of your pursuits. How have you learned to be more present in the moments when you're not all in?
Let's stick with honesty. I haven't gotten better. I just got richer. Let's be honest.
Damn.
I have. I
That's
don't
real
have.
shit.
I don't have to work as much. I don't have to work as hard to make the same or more amount of money.
Yeah.
Truthfully speaking, and she is incredible, and she's saved me in a lot of ways. But if I was still hustling the way that I was in my early 30s, I probably would not. I would not be the person that I am. I would still be that same person. It's just a fact.
Have you had to give up certain visions for yourself now to fulfill this
No,
new life?
no. She came into this eyes wide open too.
Mm-hmm.
And so there have been periods of time where I have been engrossed in projects. But what's cool about having her as a partner is she gets as excited about my vision as I do. That's so super rare.
Yeah.
So super rare. And maybe it is actually, I should give myself maybe a little bit of credit. Maybe it is too that when I'm not focused, I am pouring into that because I'm not so hyper like, okay, I've done my job, but this is going to, no one knows the outcomes of things, but I've gotten very comfortable with if I do, then I can expect. And I'm surprised sometimes, but younger entrepreneur or entrepreneurs, you don't know. All you think is, I've done this. I have no clue what the outcome is going to be. I suspect this is what it's going to be, but not having that confidence yet leaves you. Downtime is horrifically scary.
Oh my God.
You're like,
yeah.
I have to just keep moving until I get this result that I'm waiting for. And days feel like years, and years feel like it's impossible. And it's not unique. It's what we all experience, and that creates it makes it very difficult to be present because all you want is that clock to move faster so you can get to the result of what you've done, and you miss life.
That's
True.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true.
The only and I cannot even say that I've figured this out, but the one thing that I have learned is you have to drop a certain level of like a masochist, like this addiction to pain, that not everything that is worth, like not every success is going to come from pain associated with it.
I don't know that is that a thing?
So a masochist?
I know what a masochist is.
Okay, so I'll give you an example that I
How
saw
do you
recently.
tying it to business?
The best example is I was sitting at my desk one morning, hitting the desk, being like, I want more deals. I want more deals. I've sent X amount of emails. I've done da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I need it. I want it. Give it to me now. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm driving myself insane. And I almost made a decision.
That didn't work.
All right. I almost made a decision. I almost decided that I wasn't going to go run in substitute for just continuing to hammer all morning.
Okay.
I went and ran, get done my run. Not anybody that I emailed. I get a text. Such and such that I tapped 5 months ago that I started a conversation with. They want to meet with you. They have a 4-company deal that they want to approach you with, blah, 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 blah. Let's set it up for next week. And I'm like, I can't, there's nothing that I can do besides continue what I'm doing to make this happen. Like it was so like that. And granted, there was work that went into establishing the relationship, blah, 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 blah. But it was a moment for me to go, just iron grip, this has to work, is not the only way.
Agreed. But I think we went back to what we talked about a little bit. I think having full control over your day and understanding your day is super helpful in those situations.
100%.
Like if you've never perfect, but if you have an ideal day, and a part of your ideal day is at 11:15 you take a 45-minute run, you would never question that.
Yeah, exactly.
You would never question.
So true.
Because that's a part of the day that makes me feel whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Also, the harder you squeeze, the less likely things are to happen. It is what it is. What it's going to be, it's going to be. It's all like these, like, oh, okay, it's so goddamn true.
It is.
Like, me, deal fall, multi-million-dollar deal falls apart. I'm like, it's just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's not me comforting myself. Like, the reality is, if you're going to be in this game a long time, you can be incredibly successful and have 80% of the deals that you thought were going to close never close.
Yep.
Maybe it's even more than that, right? You know, as my COO now became my partner, he's learning, like, really in the trenches how real that is. And for the first time ever, you know, a deal fell apart. It's the first time I heard him say, yeah, that's probably the best thing that could have ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
The deal that doesn't happen is often the best deal you could ever have.
Yeah.
Because if it fell apart today for some reason, it's almost guaranteed it would have fell apart later. And when it fell apart later, the damage would have been so much deeper. And so you just have to fall in love with, I don't know, I'm not a mystical guy. I'm not this nonsense, but things do kind of happen the way that they should. And the deal either didn't happen because it wasn't right for you, or you didn't do the things you needed to do. Either way, it's done. Like, you get to change that next time. You learn a lesson that that type of person or that type of organization is not right for you, or you learn that you screwed up and next time you don't do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the business of the business.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I could go on for hours, but
I think we did.
I'm gonna save it. Thank you so much for coming on.
My man.
Yeah, appreciate you.
You too.
Anything you want to plug?
I don't plug things.
Yeah. Check out 3F Management if you're in the business of selling your business or growing your business.
He plugged for me.
Appreciate you always.
All right, buddy.